The bloody, harsh days out on the frontier have left their mark on Kansas's ghost. The wars and random acts of violence left a trail of unsettling tales across the state. The legends from Kansas are truly one of a kind. Whether you want to find the gateway to hell or sit on the devil's chair, you can do it all in Kansas. Today, we will look at 10 of Kansas's many urban legends. Fort Leavenworth is the oldest settlement in Kansas and is the oldest active U.S. Army post west of Washington, D.C. Today, it is known as a maximum security prison for the Department of Defense. The fort is also known as one of the most haunted locations in Kansas. Colonel Henry Leavenworth was given an order to find land for a permanent camp to protect the settlers and pioneers traveling the Santa Fe Trail. Leavenworth, along with 4 companies from the 3rd Infantry, including children and supplies, reached the site for the future fort on May 18, 1827, and began to set up camp. Colonel Leavenworth died on July 21, 1834, from an infection from falling from his horse while chasing down a buffalo calf. After the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, the fort served as the first territorial capital of Kansas, and in May of 1872, Congress began plans to move the U.S. military prison to Fort Leavenworth. Prison operations began in 1875, and it remains the only maximum security correctional facility in the Department of Defense. It is also the oldest penal institution in operation. There are several reported hauntings in the various buildings at Fort Leavenworth, with the most famous being General George Armstrong Custer. Legends say his apparition patrols the National Cemetery and will kneel at different graves as if to offer prayer to those he may have wronged in life. There are also several Civil War soldier apparitions reported in the cemetery. Reports also say that Custer haunts the general's residence on Scott Avenue. It is reported that his spirit roams the first floor. It is believed his restless spirit still remains because he was court-martialed here and was disgraced. The original St. Ignatius Chapel was built in the 1870s, but the church and the adjacent home burnt in 1875. A young priest known as Father Fred died in that fire. The new house was built with the materials that could be salvaged from the old church. According to legends, the first residents of the home reported seeing a hooded figure walking up the stairs to the attic, unmindful of anyone around them. They believed the figure was Father Fred. Later, other residents of the house would report that Father Fred would join them for dinner on occasion, walk up and down the stairs from the attic, and appear in the kitchen. The spirit of Catherine Sutter is a figure often reported in the fall. Catherine and Hiram Sutter, along with their children Ethan and Mary, came to Fort Leavenworth to visit relatives in 1880. Right after arriving, the children were sent out to gather firewood, but never returned. They searched for the children for 3 days and 3 nights before giving up, but Catherine refused to give up her search. Hiram and Catherine remained at the fort through the winter. Because of her late-night searches in the harsh wintry weather, Catherine caught pneumonia and died. Some believe she actually died of a broken heart. Hiram returned to Indiana that spring and soon received word that his children had been found alive. Evidently, they had fallen into the river and drifted downstream, where the Fox Indians found them and took them on their winter migration. Hiram returned to get his children, but Catherine's apparition is still said to be looking for them, carrying her lantern, calling out the names Ethan and Mary. There is also a lady in black. In 1975, the residents at 16 Sumner Place reported that their 6-year-old son started telling vivid and historically accurate stories from the frontier Kansas. When they asked where he learned them, he told them that a nice lady in a back black dress reads stories from her book to him after he goes to bed at night. Later that night, the parents snuck up to their son's room and saw a faint glow under the door and heard the low murmuring voices. Scared, the parents rushed in, noticing a strange chill in the air, and the rocking chair in the corner was empty, but rocking by itself. The little boy started crying, saying the woman told him that if his parents ever discovered her, she would have to leave and never return. The parents then reportedly had the house exorcised by Catholic officials denied it. Regardless, the boy never saw the lady in black again, but she didn't go far. The lady in black went right next door. According to residents, the doorknobs would turn on their own, lights turn on and off on their own, and a presence is felt in the kitchen, stairways, and bedrooms. One resident reported that she left dirty dinner dishes on the counter. When she returned, she found them scraped and stacked neatly beside the dishwasher. Another resident reported that she had woken up by a touch on her arm and the sound of someone speaking her name. When she opened her eyes, she saw the figure of a woman dressed in black beside her bed, and then the figure faded away. The Rookery Building, built in 1832, is the oldest continuously occupied building in Kansas. Reports say that the spirit of a young woman with messy hair rushes people screaming like a madwoman with a white flowing gown. Other apparitions reported here are of an old woman who sits in the corner, a young girl throwing a fit, an old man in a nightshirt, and other ghosts who like to hide children's toys. There is also a toilet flushing ghost at 22 Sumner Place. According to legends, the upstairs residents went on a short vacation and left the key with the downstairs residents to watch over things. One day, the man was watching TV and heard the upstairs toilet flush. Knowing nobody was home, he went to check it out and found no one there. Later that night, it happened again, and his wife insisted he check it out. Again, the man found no one. When his neighbor returned, he told them what had happened. The neighbor just smiled and said it happens all the time. Stull Cemetery is a lonely place in rural Kansas where an old crumbling church and tiny graveyard sits, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. The church was finally torn down in the last couple of years for safety reasons, but the abandoned graveyard remains and is considered one of the most haunted places in Kansas. According to legends, witches and other occult groups still use the cemetery for their dark rituals. During the 1800s, an old gnarled pine was used to hang people accused of witchcraft, but lightning recently struck the tree and it had to be cut down. There is also a trail called Devil's Road with a strange history. A farmer who had a field in that area at one time was burning his field and ended up accidentally killing his son. For unknown reasons, his son just walked right out into the burning field. On the trail, there is also a tree where a man that went missing was discovered hanging. Both the spirit of the boy that the burning field had claimed and the missing man are said to still roam the trail today. Now, the most well-known legend of Stull Cemetery relates to a hidden flight of stairs in the woods close to where the church used to be. According to legends, the entrance to these stairs opens on Halloween and the spring equinox. Anyone who finds the stairs and descends will find a gateway to hell at the bottom. According to legends, at midnight on Halloween, the devil himself appears in the cemetery to visit a grave of a witch who gave birth to his child. Sometimes the child will even appear in the form of a wolf in the surrounding woods. At the turn of the century, the Sallie house was the residence of an Atchison physician. The front of the house was the office space and examination rooms, and the family lived upstairs. One day, a mother brought her 6-year-old daughter, Sallie, in to see the doctor. The child had collapsed from severe stomach pains. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis and knew surgery couldn't wait any longer. In a hurry to try and save young Sallie's life, the doctor began cutting to remove her appendix before the anesthesia took full effect. Sallie's screams suddenly stopped, and she grew pale and limp, dying on the operating table. Her last memories are of a man whom she believed was torturing her. Sallie House has long been known as haunted, but the activity grew more ominous in 1993 when the house was rented to a young couple. At first, it was their dog who seemed to growl at nothing, especially near the upstairs nursery. Then, things took a turn for the worse, becoming violent in nature. Fires broke out mysteriously and sinister attacks began on the husband. The operating room would get cold and objects would visibly move whenever the husband was near. He would feel scratches on his chest and stomach, but for some reason the wife and baby were never attacked. Paranormal investigators have reported video and other equipment malfunctioning. Batteries that were fully charged would immediately drain, objects moving on their own, unexplainable scratches or bruising on their bodies during and after their visit, physical touches, mysterious coldness, and even trained guide dogs refused to enter the nursery. Alma, Kansas is a small town west of Topeka with a population of about 800. It doesn't have a lot going on unless you consider the local cemetery and the Devil's Chair. Visitors to Alma Cemetery have reported a fair amount of paranormal activity, especially at night. Photos taken here show orbs and misty figures. According to more recent reports, there is a dark presence near the tree line. Another legend involves the Devil's Chair. Legends say that during the 1800s there was a mean farmer who owned the land and refused to sell it to the town. The town officials repeatedly tried to get him to sell. There was a well on the land, and one day the farmer went to his well and never returned. Town officials again came out to try to get him to sell, but couldn't find him. But there was a horrible smell coming from the well. The well was just covered up, and since the farmer never returned, they took his land. With all the stories surrounding the well, sometime in the 1980s, a group of teenagers went to that well to see if they could find the spirit of the old farmer. One kid sat on top of the closed well, and when the others looked away for just a moment and turned back, their friend had disappeared. At first, they thought it was a joke, but they never did see their friend again. Today, what is left of the old well is known as the Devil's Chair. It's no surprise that bridges are known to be haunted. They are often the site of tragic accidents and lovers' quarrels gone wrong, and Rocky Ford Bridge is no exception. Known locally as Bird Bridge, Rocky Ford Bridge is located south of Emporia, Kansas. This one-lane bridge is where Reverend Thomas Bird and his mistress drugged and murdered his wife, Sandy Bird, in July of 1983. Their scandalous story was told in the 1987 movie Murder Ordained. Legends say that Reverend Bird murdered his wife by shoving her car into the river below after the struggle on the bridge, where he tossed her body over the side. All of the killings were due to Reverend Bird's affair with Lorna Anderson, with whom he had a pact with to kill their respective spouses so they could be together. Both the Reverend and Lorna were convicted and jailed for murder. According to legends, Sallie Bird's screams can still be heard on the bridge, as well as her footsteps. Many people have dared to walk the bridge at night, only to return screaming back to their vehicles. On a hill in Kansas City sits a crumbling mansion that looks straight out of a Gothic ghost story and is reported to be extremely haunted. Sauer Castle was built between 1869 and 1871, is 2.5 stories with a soaring tower and a widow's walk. Anton Sauer was a German-born businessman who moved to Kansas from New York after the death of his first wife in 1868. Although sick with tuberculosis, Anton met Mary Einheg Messerschmidt on a trip out to Kansas. They married in 1869. Mary had 2 daughters from her first marriage, and Anton had 5 children of his own. Mary and Anton then had 5 more daughters together, one who died in infancy and was buried on the grounds. When Anton finally succumbed to tuberculosis in his bedroom a month later, he was laid to rest in Union Hill Cemetery, with his infant daughter reburied by his side. But the rumors continued that every member of the Sauer family is buried somewhere on the property where their spirits still roam. Other legends of Sauer Castle are of a woman who hanged herself in the tower, buried treasure, buried bodies, and a secret tunnel that leads to the river. A deranged husband is said to have murdered his entire family in the castle and buried their bodies in the backyard before killing himself. Neighbors claim to see floating lights in the tower and on the grounds, as well as hear disembodied voices from the house. The Widow's Walk is reportedly haunted by a spirit of a woman dressed in black who paces, and on Halloween, a man and woman can be seen dancing in the tower. A long time ago, a young African-American girl named Molly lived in Atchison, Kansas. She led a mostly normal life until one day the local racists found out that she was seeing a local white boy from the area. During this time in our history, it was not acceptable for many people. One night, they took things too far trying to get their message across that they didn't want her dating white men. The next day, Molly was found hanging from a tree in a wooded hollow. Today, the woods are known as Jackson Park, and the hollow where she was found is called Molly's Hollow. Still today, people claim that Molly's spirit lingers in the hollow. According to legends, on certain nights at midnight, you can hear screams of a girl coming from this hollow. It is believed the disembodied screams are from Molly as she pleaded for her life. Others claim to have seen a full-bodied apparition of the girl hanging from a tree where Molly died. There are also reports of people claiming to have felt an eerie presence and a feeling of unseen hands touching, pulling, or grabbing them as they make their way through the hollow. Way out in the boonies of Leroy, Kansas, down a long gravel road, sits a small cemetery, the Lorenz Schlichter Memorial Cemetery, also known as Child's Play Cemetery. The cemetery was named after Lorenz Schlichter, who was born in Germany in 1822 and settled in Kansas in 1857. He was said to be a farmer with many children. According to legends, this cemetery is haunted by many spirits, mostly children. Before heading out to the cemetery at night, wash your vehicle. When you arrive, park and turn off your engine and then wait. Make sure to stay in your vehicle until you hear a thump, but still do not get out, just drive away. Once safely away from the cemetery, get out and check your vehicle. There you will find dusty handprints, as if something with more dust than the road stamped your car. One report claims that their car was covered with tiny handprints and dirt marks like children's drawings. Another report from the cemetery are sounds of children laughing, a squeaking of a rusty swing, which no one can find, strange-looking orbs, and unexplainable figures in pictures. The blue albino woman was once a normal living person that happened to be an albino. She was described as having really pale skin, white hair, and pink eyes. She was often teased because of the way she looked and even started to be called a witch. One night, a group of men, believing her to be a witch, dug a hole in Rochester Cemetery and buried her alive. Many believe that because of her horrible death, she will never rest and has turned to an angry and violent spirit. The blue Albino woman had been reported to be seen roaming around the streets of Topeka. From a distance, she appears to be a harmless old woman, but the closer she gets, the more you will notice how deformed she has become. She now has a bluish tint to her skin, her eyes glow red, and she has sharp carnivorous teeth and long white hair, and is reported to be wearing a white dress. She is most often reported, though, to be seen in Rochester Cemetery. The evil intent of this woman is clear. She is said to have grown her long, sharp teeth in the afterlife while eating the flesh of anyone who comes near her. According to local Native American legends, there is a ghost of a native man named Takaluma that walks the banks of the Saline River. Takaluma's father was murdered by European American settlers in 1840, and his spirit was forced to wander the earth until he found his father's skull. Takaluma warned when he first rose as a spirit that more powerful spirits might join him on his search. According to legends, his spirit was first seen by a cowboy during the winter of 1879.